How did the gospel writers know the stories that they were telling? Were the writers themselves witnesses to the events they described? Had they perhaps been told of these stories by somebody else? Or are they entirely made-up stories? When I first heard the Jesus stories as a child, even then I wondered, how did the writers of these stories know the events that they were relating? It was all very well if it was an incident with Jesus and his disciples, but many of the important stories were occasions when there were no other substantial witnesses. For example, it is doubtful who was around for the baptism of Jesus. But the story that troubled me most related to the so-called temptations of Jesus, where in a series of little encounters with the devil, Jesus is first challenged to turn stones to bread. He is then invited to cast himself off the pinnacle of the temple and have angels save him. And finally he was taken to a mountain top and offered all the world's countries. Now, what troubles me here is there is no suggestion that anybody else was accompanying Jesus. There was nobody else out there in the desert, was there? There was nobody else taken to the pinnacle of the temple. There was nobody else on that mountaintop. How on earth did the gospel writers know such stories? Now, I've asked this question of Christians, and the most plausible response I've ever had is, well, that's what Jesus spoke about as he led them about the wilderness. He must have on one occasion have said, "Hey guys, guess what happened when I first got into the Messiah business? There I was on earth, and the devil came along and took me up to the mountaintop." Yeah, can we believe such a story? I don't think so. But this problem of having an authentic witness gets worse. The three Gospels, Matthew, Mark and Luke, all tell a version of the final meeting of Jesus and the disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, the problem here is that the disciples continuously fall asleep, and Jesus chastises them for this dozing off and then goes off to pray. So the disciples are sleeping and Jesus is praying. The Gospel writers recalled the words of 3 prayers of Jesus. Luke even intrudes the appearance of an angel, all while the disciples sleep. Now, immediately after that incident, he gets identified by Judas and arrested and taken off for his trial and crucifixion. At no point does Jesus gain the opportunity to regale the fact that he was in the garden praying while they are sleeping. There are no witnesses to that event. What can and has been invented is the dialogue given to Jesus as he prays in that garden. It's just another fantastic story, another ripping yarn from the New Testament.